The hadith regarding rada', regarding the specific qualities as well of like the milk and the effects of it, is the hadith of Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala an in Sunnah Abi Dawood. لا يحرم من الرضاع إلا ما أنبت اللحم وأنشز العظم. That no breastfeeding prohibits except that which grows the meat of a child and strengthens the bones of a child. And so this is the milk that the child feeds off. And so that happens under the age of 2. As for if the child does not need it and he's just drinking it as a result of almost like having almost like a supplementary meal, then that no longer, this bond does not really apply. And obviously that happens after the age of 2. And also you have to consider the number. We move on to the last hadith regarding al-Rada'ah, which is where, and this is where this topic again that we covered previously in the hadith of Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha. Remember that man that was seated with her, that she thought was her brother. And this happens time and time again as a result of people not documenting these sort of bonds as well, who breastfed who. And so this hadith is the hadith of Uqbah ibn al-Harith, أنه تزوج أمي يحيى بنت أبي إيهاب فجاءت أمة سوداء فقالت قد أرضعتكما فذكرت ذلك للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال فأعرض عني قال فتنحيت فذكرت ذلك له فقال وكيف وقد زعمت أن قد أرضعتكما. And so in this hadith, the hadith of Uqbah ibn al-Harith, he mentions that he married a daughter of Ibn Abi Ihab, Yahya. And so whilst they were married, and again they aren't aware of their relationship between each other, a slave girl, a black slave girl comes along and she basically says that I breastfed both of you. You've just got married, you're together, I've breastfed both of you. So you're both of your milk mothers, which would make them brothers and sisters. And so this was mentioned to the Prophet ﷺ, or Uqbah mentioned this to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ turned away. And then the Uqbah comes again, and the Prophet ﷺ said, and how? Whilst she has claimed that, meaning that's it, you're no longer, how are you still married? And so in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ rebukes the questioning of Uqbah regarding this specific matter, because once the woman has claimed that she's breastfed both of these individuals, that's it. You've become aware that you're now brothers and sisters. There is no marriage there, and this is obviously what went before would be a nikah shubha, would be a form of like a doubtful marriage, would be rendered invalid at the point of them acquiring knowledge that they are actually brothers and sisters, and obviously there is no marriage between them. And so in fasakh al-nikah, this is one of the reasons why you have fasakh, where the marriage is automatically annulled. Before that they were married because nobody knew of this, but the second that comes to light, the marriage is automatically annulled.
شيخ عندك نسخة فنهاه عنها
فنهاه عنها لا ما عندي. وش الحديث هذا؟ اذكر لي اللفظ.
اللي هو وقد زعمت وكيف وقد زعمت أن قد أرضعتكما
أي فنهاه عنها لا ما عندي. أي. What about does anybody have the copy of Abdul Qasim?
كيف وقد زعمت أن قد أرضعتكما.
بس. Yeah, that's زيادة هذا عندكم. وقد نهاه عنها هذا ما عندي. بس all of this, it just strengthens the topic of the prohibition coming about as a result of that issue. There is a very important issue here, which is that generally speaking, ash-shahada, a testimony requires at least 2 people. And in the context of women, it's even more mu'akkad that you have 2 people, because their one testimony of a man in the Sharia is equivalent to 2 of the women. And here you have this exception. And the scholars of Islam discuss whether that's actually an exception or whether this follows the general theme of how testimonies work. And so the theory of testimony in Islam, al-Nadariyah al-Shar'iyyah towards the Bab al-Shahada, is that it follows ilm al-shakhs, what the person could have acquired knowledge regarding. And so, for example, in the context of wealth and so on, this is something that, generally speaking, the person engaged in it is a man, because that is how trade would work, especially in those days. As for these sort of issues, then it's really only women. This is only women, and so her shahada sufficed. Her shahada sufficed. And so she claimed that she didn't need somebody else to agree with that, even though, again, look at everything that you have in this hadith. She was a slave as well, which would have reduced the status of that testimony as well. But again, just because that is there, automatically the bond is affirmed, the bond of them being brothers and sisters, and the marriage is automatically annulled. The marriage is automatically annulled. The Prophet ﷺ also rebuked him in this hadith because of his attempt to try and remain with her, even though there is a lot of questions with regards to this, and you can see that her testimony, there is a lot that you can ask regarding. And the Prophet ﷺ rejected all of that and automatically took the position that that marriage is automatically null and void, and that يَثْبُتُ الرَّضَاعِ, that automatically you affirm the topic of they're being related by way of breastfeeding. Shahadatu Thubut al-Rada' is a topic of disagreement amongst the scholars of Islam. This wording, as you can see, is in Sahih al-Bukhari, and scholars of Islam do have a difference of opinion regarding that. And so, for example, the views of Imam Al-Shafi'i and the madhab of Al-Shafi'iyya is 2 men, 4 women. And in the case of a slave girl, it would even break down even more. So it's almost like this hadith, they don't even apply it entirely. The Hanafis, they take the stance of 2 men or 1 man and 2 women. So which is a little bit closer to the view of the Hanabila. This particular view that bases itself on this hadith is from the mufradat of the madhab. So it's the rare opinions that Imam Ahmad is the only person that called and acted upon this particular hadith in Sahih Bukhari, that no, any person that makes the claim, like they say, I am the, for example, here in this testimony, she's saying, I breastfed both of you individually, then automatically you know that marriage and you affirm the relationship of them being brothers and sisters. This could be, like I said previously again, that because yughallab janib al-tahrim, there is 2 things here. Is there a sort of like, is the testimony, there is a question mark regarding it, and so you could automatically assume that there's a level of permissibility to attach to it, and as a result of that you could affirm the marriage. But the concept of muharramat, because of the haram being so severe here, any form of anything that even proves the haram, even slightly, such as a very weak testimony, is automatically put before the evidences that show permissibility. Does that make sense? So it goes back to the qa'idah of تغليب جانب الحرام على الحلال, putting the prohibition before the permissibility, and that is, like I said, the view of the madhab with regards to this, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, and that is the strongest opinion with regards to this. A hadith in Sahih Bukhari. The last hadith is a hadith regarding al-hadana. Al-hadana. Hadana in Islam is child custody laws, who gets right over the child. And this is a very problematic arena, because you find a number of hadith, and combining between these all of these hadith is the reason why the scholars of Islam differ. Every single madhab has their own arrangements of how child custody laws work. And it's one of those chapters where it's almost, if you're going to try and memorize all 4 madhahib when you're studying things like Bidayat al-Mujtahid, from when I remember being in the bachelor's program, which is like Fiqh al-Khilaf, it's such a headache. Because the Hanafis have one way of doing it, the Malikis have another way of doing it, the Shafi'is have another way of doing it, the Hanabila have another way of doing it. And so it's a very problematic area. This hadith seems to be the only one that really seems to be one of the hadith that the scholars of Islam somewhere down the who comes first ladder sort of thing, they have an agreement over. And this hadith is the hadith of Al-Bara ibn Azib. It occurred, and there is a khilaf here as well, was it again after Fath Makkah, or, and this is a stronger opinion, that it occurred in the 7th year of the hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ after Umrat al-Qadha. Umrat al-Qadha. And Umrat al-Qadha was a umrah that the Prophet ﷺ made, and the Prophet ﷺ only performed 4 umrahs. 4 umrahs. This was the umrah that he made after Sulh al-Hudaybiyah. So the year there was the Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, which is the Amasit, the 6th year of Hijrah, the 7th year of Hijrah, he goes to Mecca and he performs that umrah, the umrah of making up for the previous year, and that is this umrah. So when he leaves And even then, that opinion as well, they differ over when it occurred exactly, when they left. But this is a very interesting story. عن البراء بن عازب رضي الله عنه قال خرج رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يعني من مكة فتبعتهم ابنة حمزة تنادي يا عم فتناولها علي فأخذ بيدها وقال لفاطمة دونك ابنة عمك فاحتملتها فاختصم فيها علي وزيد وجعفر فقال علي أنا أحق بها وهي ابنة عمي وقال جعفر ابنة عمي وخالتها تحتي وقال زيد ابنة أخي فقضى بها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لخالتها وقال الخالة بمنزلة الأم وقال لعلي أنت مني وأنا منك وقال لجعفر أشبهت خلقي وخلقي وقال لزيد أنت أخونا ومولانا. And so in this hadith, the hadith of Bara ibn Azib radiyallahu ta'ala an, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam was on his way out of Mecca. He was leaving Mecca. When was this exactly? A point of discussion amongst the scholars of Islam. The majority of muhaddithin hold that it was right after Umrah al-Qadha, where he performed Umrah right after the following year after Sulh al-Hudaybiyah. He was leaving Mecca, heading out to maybe some other area for a battle, and this daughter of Hamza follows the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, calling out to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Am, the oh uncle. This is a young girl. And so Ali radiallahu ta'ala anha grabs her and took her by the hand, and he gave her to his wife, the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha, and he says that this is your basically your cousin, and so look after her, look after your cousin. After that, a period of time after it, or a little while after it, these three individuals, Ali, Ja'far and Zayd, come to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all of them asking for what? All of them asking for custody over this child. And so Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu says, and he begins and he says, I am the most deserving of it. I am the most deserving of it. أنا أحق بها وهي ابنة عمي. Because she is the son of my uncle, my cousin. She is, because he is the son of Abi Talib, and Hamza was his uncle, radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. And so Ja'far says, yes, but she's also my cousin. She's also my cousin. But I am married to her maternal aunt. So the mother of the wife of Hamza, that was the mother of this daughter, her sister was married to Ja'far. So he says that my wife is the maternal aunt to this girl. Zayd says that she is ibnatu akhi. And here ibnatu akhi is a very interesting term. What does it actually refer to? There's a number of opinions here, but in essence it refers to the fact that Hamza radiyallahu ta'ala an, it refers to the freeing of Zayd. It refers to the freeing of the slave, Zayd, whilst he was a slave. How exactly that happened is a point of differing amongst the scholars of Islam. And others say that no, it refers to the mu'akha, which is the brotherhood that occurred in Medina, and that the Prophet ﷺ paired between Zayd ibn al-Haritha and Hamza ibn Abd al-Muttalib. And so Zayd basically comes along and he says that I am the most deserving because he is my brother as a result of this relationship. And so the Prophet ﷺ قضى بها لخالتها. He says, I'm going to give her, and this is a decree from the Prophet ﷺ, I'm going to give her to her auntie, her maternal aunt, which happens to be the wife of Ja'far. And so she goes to Ja'far, and the Prophet ﷺ says, al-khalatu bimanzilatil that your maternal aunt is of the status of your mother. And this is a very important part of the hadith, and we're going to look at it inshallah ta'ala in a little bit more detail. Then the Prophet ﷺ turns to his companions and he praises each and every single one of them, which they are deserving of. The Prophet ﷺ says to Ali radiyallahu ta'ala an, Anta minni wa ana mink. I am from you and you are from me. And this is because of all of the great mawaqif the great stances and the merits of Ali radiallahu ta'ala an, in that which he endured for the sake of the da'wah that the Prophet ﷺ had bore. And so the Prophet ﷺ gave him the status of you're from me and I am from you. Anything that is harm for you, or anything that's bad that's said about you or harm to you, is the same to me and the good as well. And the Prophet ﷺ says to his cousin Ja'far, Ashbahta khalqi wa khuluqi, that you are your resemblance of my character and my looks as well. And so this is an immense praise of his cousin Ja'far ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala an. And he says to Zayd, Anta akhuna wa maulana, that you are our brother and our freed slave. That maulana here, it can refer to both the person that freed and also the individual that was freed. So the ones that the slave master and both the slave, after they are emancipated, after the slave is emancipated, is referred to as a mawla. A mawla. And so the Prophet ﷺ praised him with that as well. This hadith, in essence, is probably the one hadith that comes in Bukhari and Muslim regarding this topic of al-hadana, and we take away that the Prophet ﷺ gave a preference to the maternal aunt. The maternal aunt. The scholars of Islam differ, like I said to you, in a great deal with regards to who takes precedence with regards to al-hadana. And there are aspects of it that are pretty much agreed upon. Such as, for example, that with regards to a daughter, with regards to a young girl, that the preference is given to the mother. And then after that, her aunt. Or after that, her grandmother, her mother's mother. And then after that, her aunt, and so on. So that she is raised by a woman is preferred in the Sharia, and this hadith is an indication of that. And al-khala bi manzilati al-umm, that the maternal aunt takes the status of the mother, because the girls need to be raised in a manner that is tender and soft and gentle, and that would predominantly happen in the house of a woman rather than the man. The other as well, the other three hadith, and this is why this chapter is a little bit more complicated, because the hadith of Kitab al-Hadana, it's about how do you make jam' of these nusus, how do you combine between these evidences. And so there are aspects that the scholars of Islam agree on, and there are aspects that they don't really see eye to eye, because of these hadith you can combine them in different ways, and as a result of that, the different scholars viewed them or combined them in different manners. And so, for example, from the things that are agreed upon as well is, as a result of this hadith, that at-takhyir, which is when the child reaches a point of a tamyiz, which is like at the age of 7 and the like, that he gets the option to choose which parent he wants to be with. And so this hadith teaches us that this is specific to what gender?
The girls.
The opposite. The mother, the girl would have to remain with the mother, because that is the most suitable environment to her. So the boy is the one that gets to choose, and that is why the hadith comes with that the takhyir was regarding the boy, and the boy chose to be with his father eventually, and the Prophet ﷺ allowed the man to take it. Even the ahadith, for example, that come regarding, such as the other hadith, Anti ahaqqu bihi ma lam tankahi, that you are more deserving of the hadana, to have custody of this child as long as you do not remarry. And this is actually a very interesting topic as well, because it's almost like you have two people that were married, they then divorce, then the child remains with his mother, the mother gets remarried, and there's other children that are going to come, and there's going to be a little bit of issues between how do the two children live together. And it's almost like because of that, the children are shifted off to the father, and that happens with all of these relationships. And this is a very interesting hadith in that perspective. And so, for example, does this apply to daughters in this hadith as well? In light of what we mentioned regarding al-khalatu bi manzilati al-umm, that the Prophet ﷺ gave a preference to the woman raising the daughter as per the hadith that we covered. And so all of that needs to be considered with regards to al-hadana in general. And the scholars of Islam, their aqwal, like I said, they're all over the place with regards to how you structure this matter. And so pretty much there are aspects of it that the scholars of Islam agree upon, and there are aspects that they differ upon. This hadith, al-khalat bin manzilat al-umm, is just one of those hadith that the aspects that relate to it are clear, are preferred. So for example, if there is no mother and father, and there is a maternal aunt as well as, there's a bunch of uncles. And this individual that is requiring of child custody is a daughter, a girl, that she goes to the aunt and not to her uncles, for example. That is agreed upon. As for the different aspects of the hadith, or who comes first with regards to that, it's a point of differing. And so even, for example, who gets the first pick as well? Who gets the first right? So for example, the Hanafiya put the mother before the father. The Hanabila put the father before the mother, with the exception of, obviously, if it's a daughter. And all of these differences appear. The Malikis, from the get-go, they say no. Not even the mother and the father, if there's a divorce, do you give presents to them. They say تُقَدَّمُ الْجَدَّةُ عَلَى الْأُمِّ, that the mother's mother is given presents even over the mother. And the Shafi'iyya as well, they give preference to any mother. Could be her mother, her grandmother from her maternal, the mother's side, or the grandmother from the father's side. Whichever mother is, we would give it to her instead of it going to a father, so that they can have that rahmah in the way she's nurtured and she's raised. In general, that which is ma'mul biha al-yawm, when it comes to like mahakim al-shar'iyya and so on, is that all of these opinions in reality, they stem around one thing, which is that tuqaddam al-aqarib. That is agreed upon. That relatives, close relatives, are given a preference. And as well as what we mentioned regarding looking out for the gender, and for the boy looking out for that topic of al-takhyir, which came in the hadith of, the hadith that came in Sunnah Abi Dawud, I believe it's from the narration of Aisha as well, that once he reached the age of al-tamyiz, that he's given the option to choose, and that's for the boy more specifically. And so after that, if you can't really pick who it goes to, then that which is acted upon is almost like all of these different principles that we mentioned so far, that you just go towards qur'ah. There's all of these different structuring that you find in the madahib. None of it is really based on actual evidence. It's not really a dhabit. And so they just say you pick a lot. And whoever this lands on, he gets to take custody of the child. And this is also what you find in, the later works of scholars, Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen, Ibn al-Qayyim in Zad al-Ma'ad and elsewhere as well, with regards to how this topic works. The last thing that I want to cover, and which is really important as well, even though it's not really clear in the hadith, because the companions had this himma of actually going out their way to actually looking out for these children to begin with. But what is the ruling of child custody to begin with? Is it recommended? Is it wajib for a child to find a home that looks after him in the midst of his relatives? That's what child custody is. Is it mandatory that somebody takes him in and raises him? So say you're an uncle, you have a brother, the father passed away and the mother passed away. That responsibility, is it just something that is recommended, or is it wajib? Any ideas? Do we leave them to be treated as orphans? Or is there a preference to them being given child custody, being given to a relative, even if it means ijbar, that it's forced onto them? Nobody? So the ijma' of Ahl al-Ilm is that if there's a close relative, they're forced to take him in. And that it's wajib upon them. And that is what this bab of hadana bases itself on. That a child, he has to be taken in, except if there's no way of actually taking his child in for whatever reason that exists. But if the individual or close relatives has the ability, then the consensus of the Muslim Ummah is that they have to do so, and this is something that is mandatory upon them. In this hadith, obviously, you find the Sahaba and how they rush towards maintaining these rights of kinship, because Sulat al-Rahim, and this is a form of it, this is a format of where it becomes wajib, is in essence what this topic revolves around. You have a relationship to this child. This child no longer has a parent that can look after him. That responsibility falls on your shoulder. You can't just neglect him. And all of this, in all of these things that we've seen time and time again, the rahmah of al-Islam, whether it's towards the children, the two spouses, and the importance of family by way of all of these hadith that we've seen. And this hadith is no different. That the Sahaba, it was well deeply rooted in them, the importance of the ties of kinship, because it was the norm of that time. And so when this child came along and they didn't have anybody to raise them, automatically three of them rushed to try and take them in. And so the obligation is there, even though the hadith itself does not show it. We'll stop here inshallah ta'ala. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.